Gunfire erupts in a quiet neighborhood, leaving one man dead.
It's unbelievable.
What we know about the two teens charged with murder as neighbors speak out on this act of youth violence.
There's no accountability for them.
A man admits to kidnapping, robbing, and burning his victims with a blowtorch. New tonight, a closer look at his brutal crimes, all while impersonating a cop.
This is the sort of thing that creates a general nightmare among the populace.
City leaders remain tight-lipped over controversies surrounding safe streets.
And without the information, we're left in the dark.
The information they're keeping from you. Car thefts skyrocket across Baltimore, but hardly anybody is facing consequences. Why thieves are more likely to get away with it.
We have a break in the rain for now, but it will not last long. I'm timing out when the showers will return and how long it will stick around.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
I thought maybe coming closer to the county would help the crime situation, get away from it. It's everywhere.
Neighbors in Brooklyn Park are on edge tonight after 20-year-old Tyrese Williams was shot and killed Monday afternoon. The suspects charged with that shooting are two teenagers. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. We have team coverage on the youth crime crisis. Mackenzie Frost is following the latest on juvenile crime bills in Annapolis. But first, Keith Daniels is live with more on that Anne Arundel County shooting. Keith?
Well, Kai, we're told the victim was shot and killed outside of his girlfriend's mother's home. No one there talking about what happened. The mother visibly shaken, but tonight perhaps some comfort for them with the suspects caught. It's a neighborhood recovering from what some neighbors feel was a fierce disturbing of the peace. Deadly gun violence that broke out at the corner house on Bon Air Avenue at Upland Road in Brooklyn Park. Dan and Michelle Campesino walking their dogs near their home Tuesday with the shooting on their minds.
Believe me, when I first heard about it, I was hoping it was an accidental shooting or a family squabble because this is a really quiet neighborhood. Anne Arundel County Police say it was no accidental shooting, but murder. It happened just before 3 o'clock Monday in daylight. 20-year-old Tyrese Williams, gunned down, left with multiple gunshot wounds. Investigators say Williams came out of the house and was shot by several suspects who then fled in a dark gray van, a vehicle police say stolen out of Baltimore. The commotion sent one woman next door running out of her home.
I heard the kids come in and scream, and we came to see what was going on.
At about 11 o'clock that night, investigators say with the help of Baltimore City Police, they located the stolen vehicle and detained 5 suspects in the Edgecombe neighborhood in Baltimore. Arrested and charged for murder, 17-year-old Dayron Johnson and 18-year-old Takusi Wilson, both charged as adults. A 15-year-old male and 17-year-old male were released to their caregivers without charges. Police arrested a 20-year-old man for vehicle theft charges out of Frederick County. Tonight, neighbors' reaction to the arrest of the teen suspects for murder.
They live for the now and not for the future. They look at today and not worrying about tomorrow.
There's no accountability for them. They're just allowed to, I mean, what's really going to happen to them?
Well, so far, police say they don't have a motive, but they believe it was not a random act. They say the victim was targeted. Now, if you have any information about this shooting, you can remain anonymous by calling the Anne Arundel County Police tip line. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Of course, juvenile crime getting a lot of attention right now in Annapolis. Today, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates and Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy spoke out in favor of a bill to tackle juvenile car thefts.
Almost none of these crimes are done by one individual.
So what you're seeing is the adults are preying on the juveniles and have the juveniles there as well as part of the larger overall crew. Those individuals that are running around carjacking in groups 3, 4, 5 cars a night, and they ride around carjacking citizens, taking the cars then down to a chop shop.
Well, the bill would expand the definition of organized crime to include groups of people who steal cars. They say it would make it easier for prosecutors to go after adults who use children to steal vehicles. Another bill calls on the Department of Juvenile Services to report any young person who violates GPS home monitoring to the state's attorney's office within 24 hours of the violation. A third bill calls on any juvenile charged with crimes of violence, gun crimes, or car theft crimes to be held and see a judge within 24 hours. Now, the Senate just passed a bill with bipartisan support. It includes sweeping reforms to hold juvenile offenders more accountable. The House passed a plan of its own, which is largely the same, but does have some differences. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has a look at what comes next.
We know some of the differences between the House and the Senate version really center around what to do with kids between the ages of 10 and 12. And now I'm told finding a compromise solution could happen sooner rather than later.
Has everyone recorded their vote?
The day after passing one of the biggest priorities this session,
Long day, good day. We got through a lot of stuff.
Senate President Bill Ferguson outlining the next steps for how Maryland lawmakers plan to tackle juvenile crime.
It will probably be soon after crossover. We want to kind of dispose of this issue and move forward as urgently and thoughtfully as possible.
Crossover day, March 18th, meaning if a bill has not made it to the other chamber by this deadline, it's likely dead. Getting to the bottom of what plan will prevail remains an uphill battle. Right now, the House allows kids between 10 and 12 years old to be taken to a diversionary program the first time they're arrested for stealing a car or possessing a gun. The Senate, however, gives the Department of Juvenile Services the chance to deal with kids with guns, even that young, right away. But for young car thieves in the Senate version, they would go through the Child in Need of Supervision or SINS petition process. SINS petitions are court-ordered programs.
I have actually become increasingly focused on the SINS process as a viable mechanism for impacting young people in a really significant way.
Does it concern you that the House's version also includes the carve-out for kids with handguns in the diversion process?
I believe our product is more appropriate.
Senate President Bill Ferguson not indicating if he's going to allow a bill like the House's plan to move forward. Right now, bipartisan support for both plans growing, even if some Republicans don't think the bill goes far enough. Senate Minority Leader Steve Hershey voting for the bill Monday night.
Again, this is a step, but it's certainly not a leap. We have a lot more work to do when it comes to public safety.
One of the two state senators voting against the plan, Senator Jill Carter from Baltimore City, Tuesday morning telling Fox 45 News she doesn't believe the bill is even necessary.
And so much of this is a response to perception and not reality, not factual based.
But for the people who have had their cars stolen by kids,
so stop doing it.
Have been attacked by juveniles.
I could have lost my son that night. It just doesn't make any sense.
Or even parents who have all but begged lawmakers to help them hold their young kids accountable. These proposed changes to the juvenile justice system are welcomed. Despite what we've heard before, it does sound like this proposal will end up in a conference committee. After that, the amendments would have to be adopted and another round of votes in both the House and the Senate, and only then would this plan be on the way to Governor Westmore's desk. In the State House, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
A Baltimore man pleads guilty to impersonating a police officer in order to carjack and kidnap victims. He was part of a group accused of committing these crimes from Harford County to Baltimore City. Fox 45's Jessica Babb has been digging through court documents and shows us what happened.
With the plea agreement, Devon Dorsey could be facing a sentence of 15 years in federal prison. The U.S. Attorney's Office for Maryland says Dorsey, along with others, were trying to steal cash and ended up brutally assaulting their victims, even using a blowtorch to burn someone. Imagine driving in the middle of the night and you hear this, only to find out the person pulling you over isn't a cop. Instead, criminals pretending to be law enforcement officers.
I hate that this happened. It's horrific. I hope that the law throws every book at them they can, because this is the sort of thing that creates a general nightmare among the populace.
Court docs say in May of 2021, 30-year-old Devontamont Dorsey, along with several others, drove to Edgewood in Harford County. Wearing vests with the word police written on them, masks and gloves, they pulled someone over. Armed with guns, they told the victim he was under arrest. Investigators say that's when the group put duct tape over the victim's eyes and mouth, bound his feet, and put him in the back of their car, demanding $10,000. They then used a blowtorch to burn the victim.
They're pulling them over to torture them.
5 hours later, after taking the victim's necklace, wallet, phone, and car keys, he was dropped off in Baltimore City.
That person has to be possessed. You got to be possessed in order to do something like that.
A crime some residents can't seem to wrap their mind around.
I think it's just horrible, like people do things to get money.
But it didn't stop there. Months later, Dorsey admitted that he and 2 others did it again. This time, stopping a woman as she was leaving her job at the Ace Cash Express in Cockeysville. Once again, pretending to be a police officer. Bound and blindfolded, they kidnapped her. For 6 hours, the group demanding she give them access to codes and safes for the company she worked for, before taking some of her stuff and dropping her off in Edmondson Village in Baltimore City.
That person obviously needs help.
As Dorsey could be serving a sentence of 15 years.
I would like to see laws that absolutely enhance the penalty for anybody that represents themselves as a law enforcement officer or representative of a law enforcement agency, because this kind of crime, it erodes that public trust.
Dorsey is expected to be sentenced in June. I also reached out to his attorney, but have not yet heard back. Live in Baltimore City, Jessica Babb, Fox 45 News.
Here's a live look from campaign parties across the country. As Super Tuesday comes to a close, the results from 16 states are pouring in. So far, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are coming out on top in their respective primaries. We'll have a live report on the results coming up in 10 minutes.
All right, good evening, everyone. We've had, of course, the rain earlier today, and we're going to be tracking more of that as we head into tomorrow. Unfortunately, this is our storm system that brought us the rain earlier this morning. It's just passed by New York. Now it's up in New England into Maine. We are dry for the moment. We'll stay that way tonight, but as we head through the daytime tomorrow, we're going to be talking about rainfall. Now, again, nice and dry. We will see temperatures drop likely to around the mid to upper 40s, and some patchy fog may begin to develop as we get into the early morning hours. That could be impacting your day, and we'll be talking about not just the rain coming our way tomorrow, but we've got another storm system that's going to be impacting as we move into the weekend. We're going to track that for you. Talk about some good news, though. We have some cool looking temperatures, not just cooler, but some cool, and then some warmer temperatures that we have coming too. We're going to go over all those when they arrive coming up.
Gerard, thank you. Well, coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, the Chief Diversity Officer at Johns Hopkins Medicine stepping down, what we know about her departure and the controversies she faced. Police data shows you have more than a 90% chance of getting away with stealing a car in the city. Fox 45 News examines why so many people are not being held accountable for these crimes. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost demanding answers about the Safe Streets program and where your tax dollars are going. The information city leaders don't want you to have.
all city council members should be concerned about the lack of information that's coming out of City Hall and coming out of Safe Streets.
Getting information from leaders inside City Hall about safe streets continues to be a struggle. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost investigates the city's gun violence intervention program.
Baltimore City has contracts with both Lifebridge and Catholic Charities to operate the 10 different Safe Streets locations across the city. In those contracts, there are requirements to keep track of certain job activities as well as performance results. But so far, City Hall isn't turning over everything they're supposed to have. For years, Fox 45 News has been investigating Safe Streets. Beyond the door knocking, we've pressed city leaders for answers. We've struggled to get information about how this program is run, the training, the staff. Will this change bring more transparency to this for the public?
We're very transparent about the program.
Our latest effort coming from public records requests. We've asked for a slew of documents that, according to the contracts with the city, the nonprofits and the city are supposed to have. We asked for daily logs, the numbers of mediations, number of contacts with key or high-risk individuals, number of community events, programs or participant success stories, the number of referrals to jobs and services, and other documents. All of the information tracking the progress of violence interrupters and keeping track of what each Safe Streets site is doing to ensure their efforts are actually working. We got several reports looking like this: monthly reports, quarterly reports, even an annual review of 2022. Diving into that report, the data shows homicides, shootings, violent and property crimes all up across the Safe Street zones compared to 2021. Jump to July through September 2023. 2 fewer homicides, 47 fewer violent crime incidents, but 2 more non-fatal shootings and 343 more property crimes reported. But it's what's not included in the data dump from the city that's raising questions. Fox 45 News not getting the daily logs, the number of contacts with high-risk individuals, the program or participant success stories, the number of referrals to jobs and services, number of individual employee supervisions, weekly team meetings. The Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or MONSE, telling Fox 45 News Monday it had turned over all of the information it had, implying the city does not have all of the data about the progress of the Safe Streets program, despite what's mandatory in the contracts.
There's a problem here.
Taxpayer advocate David Williams argues the contracts are clear, and if MONSE is not getting or providing the information, city taxpayers suffer.
If this program is working, there's no reason to withhold any of this information. Taxpayers and all citizens of Baltimore want to see that the money is being used properly, and that's why this information is critical.
Monday, Fox 45 News sending more emails, and Tuesday again asking Lifebridge Health, why was this information not provided? Our deadline coming and going. Only silence from the nonprofit. The oversight hearing into hiring practices for Safe Streets later this week could tee up an even bigger fight. With the budget process just on the horizon, there are likely going to be even more questions raised about long-term funding for MONSE, especially when the COVID relief money from the federal government is set to run out. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And Fox 45 News has been investigating the Safe Streets program for years. For our full coverage and the latest updates as we learn more about the organization, head to foxbaltimore.com.
Selling fentanyl that kills a drug user could soon lead to steeper consequences in Maryland. New efforts from Annapolis to crack down on dealers.
Primary results are coming in. The latest on Super Tuesday and what it means for the presidential election.
All right, one system down. We've got 2 more to go as we head into just Saturday. So we've got at least a dry night ahead. Your weather headlines, yes, we're tracking more rainfall, and we could see a total of 2 inches from this week by Saturday. But the mild temperatures are going to continue. However, I am tracking a pretty sizable warm-up. We'll talk about when that's set to arrive coming up.
And now you can watch Fox 45 News for free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus. Well, results are coming in after millions of voters made their way to the polls across the nation for Super Tuesday. This is a live look at some of the campaign watch parties across the nation. On the left, of course, we see Donald Trump speaking at his Super Tuesday party at Mar-a-Lago. The former president is dominating his rival Nikki Haley as we get the results tonight.
With a series of primary wins already under his belt, it seems Trump is likely to win the Republican nomination, but voters are split on whether that's good for the country.
I voted for Donald Trump. I'm really excited about what he's doing with the economy. I think it's really going to benefit our country in the next 4 years.
I think it's disappointing. It's a sort of a repeat of 2020. I would love to have had some different candidates. I had hoped that Trump would go away.
Sinclair national correspondent Atra El-Nashar joins us live right now with more on Super Tuesday's impact. Atra?
Yeah, good evening, Kai. You just played some voter sound there. Look, whether voters like it or not, what this map is telling us is that voters are going to likely see a rematch of 2020 this November. President Biden, former President Trump absolutely running away with their party's delegates. Now, for Republicans tonight, 854 delegates are at stake. And by all counts, former President Trump is expected to win the vast majority of them. Now, he's not going to get the 1,215 needed to become the party's nominee, but he is certainly going to get close. He's projected to win just about every state so far, the latest being Colorado and Minnesota that have just been projected for the former president. Remember, Colorado, we just learned from the Supreme Court yesterday, he will appear on the ballot there after some tried to challenge him under the 14th Amendment. Now, Nikki Haley's night, she just isn't having a good night. There's no other way to put it. The two states where she could have done well, Virginia, where there was an open primary, meaning independents and some Democrats could vote in it. And there's some more moderate Republicans in that state. But he's projected, former President Trump's projected to win by almost 30 points. Vermont is the one nail biter of the night. It is still too close to call. Who knows? Maybe Haley could walk away with a victory in the Northeast. But so far, the biggest prizes of the night: Texas, 161 delegates; North Carolina, 74 delegates. Those are both projected to go to former President Trump. So now we turn to the West Coast. The biggest prize of the night is California with a whopping 169 delegates. Polls there will close soon. We'll keep you updated.
Yeah, Atra, you mentioned Nikki Haley. She's vowed, hey, look, I'm not going to drop out of this race, at least not yet. Yeah. What's her future look like?
Yeah, she said she'd stay in this race as long as it's competitive, but she's not won a single state tonight. Again, Vermont could still be hers by the end of the night. We'll have to see. But it's very possible that when this week ends, so will her campaign. It's pretty telling that Haley is watching the results from her home state of South Carolina tonight with no plans to speak. Typically when a candidate is coming towards the end, they head home. She's also got no future rallies scheduled on her campaign website. Now, the math of tonight, like I said, it won't get Trump quite to that 1,250 needed to secure the nomination, but he will get close. And next week, there are more primaries coming up next week, Tuesday, and that could get him across the finish line. So it's likely the Haley campaign is seeing the writing on the wall. Interesting indeed. Atra El-Nashar reporting from Washington. Atra, thank you. Thanks, Kai.
Well, most of the criminals stealing cars in Baltimore are getting away with it. Why holding thieves accountable has become such a challenge.
The plan to reimagine Baltimore's iconic inner harbor is a step closer to voters. Tonight, Fox 45 hears pushback from some residents who call the plan a monstrosity. Three big stories tonight at 10:30. Johns Hopkins Chief Diversity Officer is stepping down. We take a closer look at the controversy sparked by a letter on privilege that she sent this year.
The new Harbor Place plans are one step closer to getting on the ballot in November. What needs to happen before the people of Baltimore can make the final call on redevelopment?
As car theft skyrocket across the city, data shows a low number of those crimes being solved. The city is already on pace to break the record number of car thefts that we saw last year. Through February 17th, 1,071 cars were taken in the city, up 82% from last year. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor takes a closer look at the number of cases being closed and why consequences are rare.
It's a crime shifting into high gear. In 2023, BPD recording more than 11,000 car thefts citywide. That's 30 cars stolen every day, or more than one every hour.
Right here is where I was parked.
Some swiped in a matter of minutes.
That's crazy.
In broad daylight.
On my camera is two guys standing at my car.
And often stolen steps from the victim's front door.
They just drove off in the car.
But even with so many incidents caught on camera, criminals rarely facing any consequences. At a press conference addressing the rise in crime last November, BPD announcing nearly 700 auto theft arrests. At the time, 9,300 cars had been stolen, for a clearance rate of just 7%, meaning if your car is stolen, there's a 93% chance of the thieves never being caught.
Generally speaking, I would say that these drivers who've stolen a vehicle or are in a possession of a stolen vehicle just simply flee from the police, and that's the end of it.
Former Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson explaining it's a difficult crime to solve.
No matter how one feels about the BPD's pursuit policy, it does allow offenses like stolen vehicles to just drive away and not pull over and be apprehended.
And even when a rare arrest is made, legal expert Jeremy Eldridge.
It's very difficult to prove factually.
Explaining convictions are just as hard to secure.
Because you need a victim or a witness to come forward and say, I saw this person on this date at this time steal this car, and identify them in court.
This car theft victim,
there's blood all in the car. He burned the whole roof. I mean, the car's total.
Who asked we not share her name, claiming a thief broke into her Canton home, stole the keys to her Range Rover, and sped off with the car in the middle of the night.
He drove my car for a month like it was his.
According to charging documents, a routine traffic stop leading police to make an arrest. The suspect found with a knife, prescription pills, and a plastic bag with a substance suspected to be cocaine. But when taken to court, the only guilty charge, unauthorized removal of a motor vehicle. The suspect sentenced to just over 2 months behind bars and 3 years probation.
I mean, I really couldn't believe it. I thought the charges would be like grand theft auto. I mean, the car was worth $50,000.
According to Eldridge and Johnson, the lack of accountability is likely what's driving the soaring crime rates.
They're just very difficult crimes to investigate, frankly, despite the lack of complexity in the crime itself.
There's no certainty of consequences. In fact, the likelihood of consequences are very low. So, of course, that's the problem.
As car thefts in Baltimore City continue to show no signs of slowing down. Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
That brings us to our question of the day. Do you think the city is making any progress with the car theft issue? So far, 96% of voters say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
And if you have a stolen car story or know somebody who's been impacted by the spike in auto thefts, we want to hear about it. Just scan that QR code on your screen, tell us what happened, or send an email to news@foxbaltimore.com.
Baltimore police need the public's help to find a kidnapped 4-year-old. Take a look at this video. In it, you see 4-year-old Kymir Rogers just after he was taken from his family's home today, according to police. 3 people walked by the camera. The last person in the video is seen holding Rogers. He was last seen wearing a white T-shirt. Anyone with information on these people or Kymir's whereabouts should contact Baltimore police.
The plan to redevelop Harbor Place is one step closer to voters. The city council approved 3 bills last night, paving the way for the project. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker has a closer look at what comes next.
A vote to transform Baltimore's crown jewel passed with majority support last night.
This bill passed with a vote of 14-1. Please note that Councilman Dorsey is the only no vote. This bill is approved.
The trio of bills are set to overhaul a struggling Harbor Place.
When I was a kid, Harbor Place was very different.
It did used to be a little
a lot more livelier.
I came down here today for that sense of nostalgia. I do wish that we had more places to go right now, so I'm looking forward to whatever revitalization that we can have.
The $500 million project led by developer P. David Bramble of MCB Real Estate is expected to have a mix of retail, residential, and public space with hundreds of housing units, an amphitheater, plus trees and parks.
We will not stop until this project comes to fruition so that the world can see that Baltimore is back.
And while there is a lot of support from residents looking for Harbor Place to be what it once was,
It's needed. I mean, I'm looking forward to it.
I definitely would like to see it livened up a lot more.
there is opposition too, especially when it comes to the potential housing.
I support upgrading the harbor, but I do not support what they voted on.
A group called the Inner Harbor Coalition tells Fox 45 it agrees the space needs upgrades, but feels the current proposal is not the right fit for Baltimore.
All of us were shocked by this monstrosity of a project that we had no idea was coming down the pike.
In a statement today, they said in part they expected the city council bills would pass without any real debate, telling Fox 45 the city council is simply rubber stamping this decision by Mayor Scott to turn over Harbor Place to a well-connected private developer. Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Johns Hopkins Chief Diversity Officer Dr. Sharita Golden is stepping down from her post with the medical system 2 months after her newsletter to employees went viral. The newsletter said people who are white, able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgender, male, Christian, middle class, middle-aged, and English-speaking have privilege. The letter defines privilege as unearned benefits. Critics called the message toxic.
One of the problems with Johns Hopkins doing this and sending out this memo is that you create an uncomfortability and you stigmatize those who are mentioned as the beneficiaries of privilege. And I think that's a bad idea.
In a statement following the letter, a spokesperson from Johns Hopkins Medicine said the newsletter contradicts the values of Johns Hopkins. Soon after, a screenshot circulated on social media appearing to show an internal apology from Dr. Golden to recipients of that email. Fox 45 News obtained a letter about the doctor's resignation sent to staff today, but it did not mention the controversy as the reason for her departure.
The state lawmakers are introducing a new bill to crack down on drug dealers. That bill creates a new crime for distribution of heroin or fentanyl that results in death. Under current law, supporters say it's hard for a state's attorney to hold drug dealers accountable for selling fentanyl. There's a lot of support for the bill, including those who have lost loved ones to fentanyl overdoses and Maryland prosecutors.
I do know Victoria's got his law in place. This dealer would be in jail and not be able to harm anyone else's loved ones.
This would give us another tool to go after dealers in a very serious way. I would ask the committee to give a favorable report, not just for Scotty and Victoria, but the thousands like them.
Well, this was the first hearing the bill had. It was introduced today. The clock is ticking for it to become law. It has to go through a second and third reader before it goes to a vote to the Senate floor. It needs to be approved in the Senate before crossover day to make it to the House. Crossover day is 2 weeks away.
It is one of the constant contradictions on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers in both parties can't seem to come to an agreement on what to do about TikTok, despite bipartisan agreement about the threat it poses to the country. Here's Christine Frizzell with a new round of warnings.
Today I made easily the most expensive plate of pasta I've ever made.
It's a platform that seems to offer something for everyone. But concerns in Washington are accelerating rapidly.
If I can really do magic, look, 3, 2, 1.
Not about magic or makeup, but about manipulation, since TikTok is owned by a Chinese company.
They believe that this medium is the gateway to sort of picking the lock to getting access to young people and persuading the way that they view the world.
Author Peter Schweitzer details evidence of China's campaign of influence in his new book, Blood Money, a chief strategy magnifying existing divisions in the United States.
They create thousands, if not millions, of fake media accounts on social media in the United States, posing as Americans. Half of them essentially say America's a racist society. The other half say, I only like white people.
1/3 of adults under 30 now report they regularly get their news from TikTok, up from 9% in 2020. Perhaps a key factor in President Biden setting up an account.
You got to take a look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am.
Despite calling it a national security threat.
To allow a company that is owned by ByteDance, which is beholden to the Chinese Communist Party, to be the dominant news platform for the next generation of Americans, I think borders on national suicide.
Top officials with ByteDance deny it's collecting data on Americans, but most lawmakers don't buy it, with a threat to ban TikTok if it's not sold to an American company. Still, there is no legislation ready to be passed, despite bipartisan agreement about the threat it poses.
We would never have allowed CBS, ABC, NBC to be owned by the Soviet Union in the 1960s. And that is, I think, if anything, understating the degree of influence that we are ceding right now.
Alarm bells from lawmakers. The campaign of influence is already being carried out on a platform they worry may be too big and too popular to rein in. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. Are you concerned that TikTok is a national security threat to the U.S.? So far, 87% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Click on the Pulse tab. Well, doctors say beauty filters are damaging self-esteem and changing what some women think their bodies have to look like. The new warning on social media and how it's impacting people.
All right, heading into the next, just the next 12 hours. We're going to be talking about more rain coming, and we have to talk about another one behind this one that's going to hit as we head into the weekend. I have some good news for spring lovers who really want to get some warm temperatures in here and some sun.